Good morning, everyone. Happy Sunday to you. Josh of Severe Weather from Raleigh, North Carolina. Tropical storm Debby continues to march northward across the eastern Gulf. I'm going to talk about what we're going to expect and show my official forecast in just a minute. The concern here with Debby is that it is going into a very vulnerable area of the Florida Gulf Coast that just got hit a little over 11 months ago by Hurricane Idalia. That was a Category 4 that weekend, excuse me, and was probably likely a high end too by the time it actually made it on shore. But because of the size of it, because of the bend in the coast, it was destructive when it comes to storm surge. This is going to be a little bit different. Debby is going to be strengthening up till landfall. Not as big as a Dahlia, but because it'll be strengthening, like we saw with Beryl last month, down the coast from Houston, a strengthening storm is going to spend less time spinning down because it's going to have that momentum as it comes into the coast. So that is one part of the picture. The other part is the uncertainty of the future of the system. We do know it's going to slow down and dump a lot of rain with it across parts of Florida and the southeast. What we don't know yet is how exactly that's going to play out. But a very high ceiling here for the potential for 20 inches or more of rain, and maybe even, I hate to say it, possibly even could be our wettest system for the state of South Carolina on record. But again, that's going to depend on where this eventually goes. So we do have a stronger tropical storm this morning, likely to become a hurricane at some point tonight or by early tomorrow morning. A possibility it may even try to make a run at Category 2, depending on how it gains its core here today and how quickly it evolves. But the certainty on the track is pretty high up until about landfall, somewhere in the Big Bend, near or just south of Tallahassee, and then weakening as it moves northward and slows down towards the Georgia-Florida line. After that, you see my area of red grows, and there's some other possibilities, some other screwy things that could happen still where the system gets stuck and tries to move back south and west. That's not my official forecast. I am continuing to take it near the coast, perhaps emerging over the Atlantic for a little while, maybe even over a day, and then making another landfall back into the low country region here. Eventually, it's going to have to move northeast, but a lot of uncertainty on how fast that turn happens. We may be dealing with Debby for at least another week, which is pretty crazy to think. But nonetheless, the main concern I have with Debby for the time being is going to be the storm surge and heavy rain coming into Florida overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. After that, the concern I've got is basically heavy rainfall and what could be a catastrophic flood for somebody in this region. So that's what I'll be talking about for you guys. We are not done with the tropics after Debby. I talked about it before a few weeks ago. This is the door opener to what's going to be an insane period with lots of tropical activity. The next wave will be moving into the islands here in a couple of days and has a 20% chance of developing into something by this time next weekend. And something we need to keep an eye on in the Western Caribbean and in the Gulf of Mexico as well. Probably not Florida at this point, more likely Cuba, Jamaica, Central America, Mexico, and possibly Texas, maybe even Louisiana, but a ways down the road at this point. So let's talk about Debby for the most part here. You can see still kind of a hot mess, but growing in size. There is not really a well-defined core in here yet, but we do have quite a bit of heavy rain and strong wind on the eastern side. The western side is getting a little bit of southwesterly shear, pushing some drier air into it. If you've been watching my videos, you've seen that dry air being modeled. Now, over time, as this moves northward into warm waters, actually, let's just call it bath water, right, won't we? It is going to have the chance to intensify and improve its structure, and it may come together very quickly here overnight into tomorrow morning. We may see a completely different system by the time we get to tomorrow morning. My title graphic showed maybe the worst case scenario from the NAM model, but you can see it should start to fill in on the western side regardless. A look at the first visible image of the day, and you can see pretty intense storms offshore. Fortunately, we're not seeing those onshore, but we do see bands of heavy rain. And as the day wears on, we're going to see kind of some more banding features here that can produce some very heavy rain, especially over west central Florida here, but even bands that may try to make their way into southeastern Florida. We've got this moist southerly to southeasterly flow. So very heavy rain for some, maybe flash flooding, maybe some severe weather as well as we get some heating of the day here. But nonetheless, it's a sloppy storm, but it's a storm that is poised to strengthen. Here's a look at the National Weather Service radar. And again, you can see all the business here on the right side, just west of the Florida Keys, but we're seeing now some heavier storms moving onshore the west coast of Florida. We've had some severe thunderstorm warnings. Not a lot of lightning, but a little bit. More likely it's the heavy rain and the strong wind we have to be concerned with. And now around Naples, we'll see that migrating up the coastline here towards Venice and Port Charlotte, Northport, Sarasota, eventually into the Bay Area later this afternoon. And then the threat for severe weather shifts north and west tonight into the Nature Coast region. We do have an aircraft in the storm right now. This is from tropicaltidbits.com. You can see the center has some pretty light wind, not a whole lot on the western side, but on the eastern side, picking up winds of 60 miles per hour or more at flight level. And these winds are probably going to stay off the coast today, but we may see some strengthening wind here as we get later into the day in places like Fort Myers Beach, Port Charlotte, Venice, Sarasota, Bradenton, all the way up to Clearwater and St. Pete. So we'll be watching how the structure of this storm evolves. The official forecast is a hurricane at this point, Category 1, but strengthening right until it hits tomorrow. The track has not changed a whole lot, a little bit west just because of how it came off of Cuba, but pretty tight at least for the next 24 to 36 hours. Then things diverge. The other thing I will say is that the intensity forecast has increased. Now we have a 60-mile-per-hour storm. This time yesterday, the forecast was for about 45, so we're already overachieving. And so we're not that far from hurricane intensity today. It's going to take a little more time to get things wrapping up, but late this evening and overnight, we could be talking about a Category 1 hurricane. Because the system has slowed down, landfall's now projected to not be until around lunchtime tomorrow. Remember earlier it was looking like early in the day. So another 6 hours over very warm water means it's got more possibility to strengthen right until it hits. And that landfall expected to be very close to where Idalia came in, maybe just a little bit up the coast here of the Appalachee Bay. After that, things slow down. Take a look at this. You could probably walk faster from Wakulla County to Brunswick, Georgia than what this storm will be doing. I don't recommend doing that, by the way, but it is going to be slowing to a crawl, probably forward motion of less than 5 miles per hour. And now we do have a tropical storm watch for the East Coast here from Florida, Georgia, all the way up to the middle coast of South Carolina as the storm may reemerge, and it may not. But regardless, there will be onshore flow here, and tropical storm conditions will be possible. Very possible this thing is going to be in our hair right until next weekend. So we're going to be talking about this quite a bit, unfortunately. Here's a closer view of our satellite from Zoom Earth. Tropical storm warning, lower Florida Keys, watch middle Keys. Warning from southwest Florida all the way up through Tampa Bay and all the way up to north of Spring Hill here to about Crystal River and Cedar Key. Hurricane watch a little bit farther up from there. And a decent amount of the coast under a hurricane warning here from the western side of the Big Bend all the way down to about Cedar Key. Hurricane watch, tropical storm warning down to about Port St. Joe, and a tropical storm watch up to about Tyndall Air Force Base. Here is from Tober Berg's website. You could see officially 85 miles per hour and then 75 after land. There's no point here at 33 hours, but it could be a little higher, maybe even 95 to 100 possibility. I don't want to scare folks, but there's definitely a chance if it's 60 now and it's intensifying the way it is, there's a chance it could be stronger. The official forecast has it coming out at about 45 miles per hour here in a few days. Not really re-strengthening much because it would be heading back on shore, but if it hangs out in here, it does have a very good source of warm water, and there'll be low wind shear and a slight chance it tries to get back to hurricane strength over the Atlantic if it gets out farther. And there's as many opportunities for it to not even reemerge into the water and stay weak over land, which would be bad for rain, but better for the coastal section of the Southeast as far as wind goes and surge goes. Forecast models have not gotten a lot better today. In fact, the uncertainty has grown. I'll show you why, but we're certain it's going into the Big Bend. We're certain it's going to go into southern Georgia. After that, things start falling apart when it comes to our confidence. And I would love to say I'm more confident, but I'm just not, and I don't want to lie to anybody about that. We've got a lot of uncertainty here, but more models than not do show it eventually exiting into the mid-Atlantic region next weekend and perhaps heading up to New England, Atlantic, Canada later next weekend, about a week from today. But there's a lot of dawdling around here. There's even some craziness that tries to bring it back into the central Gulf Coast as a weaker system, but still a rain-making system. Here's a look at the GFS ensemble and the deterministic. That's the operational in red. And there's agreement until landfall, and then after that, the wheels come off here when it comes to confidence. Intensity forecasts have increased, and they have become more confident in strengthening, with almost half of our models showing this becoming a hurricane in the next 12 to 24 hours. A lot of models not showing that, but I think they're going to be wrong. We see this a lot. There's just a resolution error that doesn't see how strong the core is getting. So likely a category 1, maybe close to 2, and then weakening back to tropical storm strength a few hours after it makes landfall, depending on how quickly it's ramping up. It may take some time to drop back off, if that makes sense. But again, this part isn't as uncertain as the track forecast. And you can see there is a decent chance, a 1 in 3 chance here, that we do get some rapid intensification in this area of the northeastern Gulf. So I would always prepare for a category higher. If there's been any proof of any of the other storms that have hit the Gulf in the last few years, it's actually happened more often than not. So I would definitely bank on something stronger than what the models show. I don't want to get too carried away. This is probably not going to be a major hurricane based on the fact that it's going to run out of time to do that. But it may be strengthening and it may be stronger than what people are expecting. And I think you need to be preparing for that. The other concern would be is if it does get out in here, it would also be a lot stronger than what this is showing. But again, that's a ways off. Here's a look at the upper level pattern. Here's why we have some crazy forecasting to do. We've got this big area of high pressure here that is producing some northeasterly flow aloft. The other concern, though, is the Bermuda High is going to build back to the west and produce some southwesterly flow. So we have some two competing areas of upper level flow, slowing down the motion of the storm. If we wanted the storm to exit, we would need this trough that's up here to be a lot farther south, and it's not. We've got what's called a COL, a COL, right in here where the flow aloft is very weak. And this creates a lot more uncertainty and a lot more chaos here. There's just no clarity in what we're looking at. And if you look at the upper level ridge here, it doesn't exactly just go away. It does weaken eventually, but it doesn't go away. So we've got just a lot of uncertainty. I mean, take a look at this. This is next Thursday, and the ridge is building back even stronger here into the northeast, meaning there's no way for this system to escape. So it's going to be around for quite some time. And storms that have done things like that include Harvey, they include Florence. These are storms we just don't even want to talk about because they were so destructive when it came to the inland flooding. But unfortunately here, we're seeing a similar scenario setting up into the Carolinas or perhaps even Georgia or North Florida. We just don't quite know exactly yet. Even though the models have hinted this is going to take until the weekend to finally exit, again, that confidence is not super high. I'll show you individual models here. This is the Icon model. It's out of Germany, showing deepening up until landfall. Maybe not as strong as I think it'll be, but showing a track that I kind of agree with. Afterwards, you can see it's just kind of hovering around Savannah and around Hardyville and Bluffton and those areas in South Carolina on Tuesday. Maybe re-emerging into the water Tuesday night, then having a chance to strengthen. Yesterday's run was stronger. I'm not going to show it to you because I don't want to freak people out, but it is showing the opportunity that may try to re-intensify and then come into North Carolina on Thursday and into Friday. It's not even to Virginia yet until Friday, and that is the faster of some of the models we've seen. The GFS is stronger, 984. That is hurricane intensity coming in just south of Tallahassee here tomorrow morning around 7, 8 o'clock. And then not even leaving Florida, moving into Georgia until after midnight tomorrow night. Staying around in Georgia for a couple days and then re-emerging into the water, maybe re-strengthening slightly, but not getting to hurricane intensity. And then it's right back into Georgia on Thursday morning and traveling slowly west. It'll be weaker at that point, but the moisture is not going to just disappear. And then it does something really weird. And again, this is really a kind of an outlier at this point, so I'm not going to trust it. But, you know, it's not totally believable. Yeah, that's the term I'm looking for. Shows it going back into the Gulf here and hitting the exact same place next weekend. Now, that would be very cruel and unusual. I don't necessarily think that's the case, by the way, but that's what the GFS is showing, but it's not consistent. The run before is totally different. As you can see here, it does go back to Georgia and Alabama. It does not go back over the Gulf. It just kind of moves into the westerlies on Monday and Tuesday. But bottom line, worst case scenario, this thing is still in the southeast next Sunday and Monday. Best case, it's away by Friday night and Saturday morning. Just, yeah, we're going to talk about it a lot more. Trust me on this one. Canadian model showing landfall in the same location, sitting around in Georgia, not getting back over water, just hovering near the coastline right through Thursday, even into Friday morning, still in Georgia, eventually kind of getting picked up by a trough by Saturday night, Sunday morning, and fading here. The Canadian is typically a little bit too weak. Yep, I'll talk about that in a minute. But it has still got the moisture here into next weekend. That's just not a good scenario for anybody. European model, again, is a little bit too far to the right, as it has been all along with this system, but it does have that landfall tomorrow morning. It does have the system hovering near the coast, near Savannah, and then making its way offshore. Because I think it's too far right, I think this is a little bit less likely to happen. If you look at the previous run, which goes beyond, it does bring the system into North Myrtle Beach and Calabash here Wednesday night, Thursday morning. Not moving quickly, though, still in eastern North Carolina Thursday night, Friday morning, eventually leaving the area by Saturday morning and then heading out to sea. I will talk about the Northeast in a minute. NAM model only goes out 60 hours. Too strong, but deepening up to landfall. I do agree with that part. I don't think it's in the 950s. It may be in the 970s or 980s, but you can see it's slowing down in South Georgia here overnight, hanging around in South Georgia tomorrow, and hanging around on Tuesday morning as well. And at this point, probably moving 1 to 2 miles per hour. Even somebody like me can walk faster than that. So anyway, that is the global models, the HWRF model showing deepening here, landfall as a hurricane tomorrow morning, a little farther west than the other models, but Big Bend area, generally speaking, then slowing down in South Georgia, drifting back into North Florida. This is Thursday morning, and it has not gone north of 31 north. That is very concerning. That's maybe not as bad for the Carolinas as it is Georgia and Florida, but we will have to see about that. It's got it hanging out near Mobile and near the Dolly Parton Bridge for a little bit too long here Thursday night. And the HAFS model, again, showing deepening to a Category 1 storm, and then hovering in southern Georgia and weakening here on Tuesday morning, back into northeast Florida, southeast Georgia on Wednesday, and just kind of meandering here, dumping quite a bit of rain. So it is a concern that the global models are too aggressive and moving it northeast and that it hangs out down in here. That's a trend I'm watching. If you remember Hurricane Florence, Hurricane Harvey, again, this is not going to be nearly as strong, but that slow forward motion was a major problem during those storms. That is something that is a growing concern to me here today. Here's a NAM model showing our strongest winds moving up into the Big Bend area. I think they're going to be a little farther to the right, but we may see gusts between 75 and 95 miles per hour. I don't know about 120. That's probably overdone. Even over 50 to 60 miles per hour in South Georgia here. So we may have some power outages all the way up to Valdosta and maybe just east of Albany, Georgia here tomorrow into Tuesday. Likeliest time for arrival of strong wind is going to be today on the west coast of the peninsula, overnight tonight in the Big Bend, early tomorrow in South Georgia. Taking a look at storm surge, this has gone up. It is concerning to see up to 10 feet between the Osceola and the Suwannee rivers in this part of the Big Bend that just got crushed last August. So we have to be very concerned with that. We do have storm surge potential on both sides of this, all the way down to Charlotte Harbor, even down the southwestern coast of Florida. And we do have 2 to 4 feet showing on the South Georgia coast as well. The rain, though, is the story here. A high risk of flash flooding here, 70% or higher over the low country. I'm going to walk you through what those rain totals could look like. But this pink area is 20 inches. That includes Savannah, Pooler, Thunderbolt, Hilton Head, Hardeeville, Bluffton, Walterboro, all the way to near Charleston, which 16 inches of rain would be catastrophic to Charleston. Sometimes 3 inches in an hour can be catastrophic, so 16 is very concerning. The blend of the models shows over 20 inches down there, by the way. Some incredible amounts of rain that may eventually merge with a front and cause heavy rain all the way up into southern New England, the mid-Atlantic region, and certainly northern and central parts of Florida, maybe even trying to get back towards Pensacola and Mobile, but I don't think we're seeing significant flooding there. The state record in South Carolina came from Florence in 2018, 23.63 inches. That is in jeopardy. The state record for Georgia, 27.85 from Alberto in 94. That one may hold, but it may not. We'll just have to see. I don't think the 35 gets beat in North Carolina. I really hope it doesn't, but again, we'll have to keep an eye on it. As you can see, the blend of the models shows close to 18 inches around Cedar Key, almost a foot near Jacksonville, 20 or 22 inches here across Chatham County, Georgia, 20 to 25 in Beaufort County, South Carolina, close to 20 in Charleston. Numbers go down a little bit farther north and east you get. This is a blend of the models. It's probably not going to be right, but if you average everything together, that's where we are. Here's Florida, and the heaviest amounts could be around the Bay Area to Gainesville, to the Big Bend, Nature Coast, maybe Tallahassee, but more likely Lake City. Taking a look farther north and east, Georgia's got a lot of rain coming, especially the low country, maybe even parts of South Georgia, over a foot of rain potential. South Carolina, I think, is going to end up getting the worst of this. But again, that's assuming that it can escape and doesn't get stuck in Georgia longer. This could still change. but some very high totals expected here. And even up the East Coast, once it exits, we got a lot of rain coming to Delaware, to the Delmarva, to New Jersey, Long Island, 6 inches, potentially more. That will cause flooding. Raleigh, 6 inches, Fayetteville, 7 to 8. New Bern, Jacksonville, close to a foot. Greenville, 8. Outer Banks, 8 inches. It's going to be an awful week to go to the beach because we're going to have just showers and storms for a few days and then drenching rain potentially later in the week. Maryland, Delmarva, 6 to 8 inches, especially east of 95 here. Farther up the coast, a lot of rain potential as well in New England. And again, this is a blend of the models. What it's probably doing is one model showing 2 inches, one showing a foot. It just averages things out. So things can change. And even parts of New England and Atlantic Canada could see a few inches of rain out of it. We do have a risk for some tornadoes later today and into this evening, especially, maybe even overnight in here. That risk tomorrow shifts a little bit northward, but not by much, and then moves up into the low country Tuesday and may stick around into Wednesday. All right, we are not finished. We have that 20% yellow area. I talked about it a little bit yesterday. This certainly has a lot of storm activity with it, and I think it develops faster than what the Hurricane Center's thinking as well by the time it gets to the Western Caribbean, and there'll be more behind it, but this one is of greater concern for the time being until we get some clarity on what may happen. But you can see all the dry air that was causing things to collapse here has pretty much gone away, and we have moistened up and the wind shear has dropped off. And so it could be all systems go here pretty soon. If you look at the ensembles, we don't really see much development in the Caribbean until we get to about Friday of next week. Then things are getting hairier for Central America, the Yucatan, Cuba, and Jamaica. We have a lot of spread after that. Here comes the next one, by the way. So we may have Ernesto, and then the ones after it are certainly to look at the following week. But if you stop things in motion, this is next Sunday evening. Again, we'll have to see how things interact with land. This is, as always, very uncertain, but some potential for maybe a storm or even a hurricane somewhere in here with a big amount of spread. You know, if it goes down here, it's probably going to be weaker. If it comes up into here, we need to be a lot more concerned, and it's too early to make any call, as always. I'll show you an operational model or two, but please don't get too caught up in it, as it will change. The GFS is kind of let up on it a little bit, but still has a system that may come close to Texas here by the 17th, and that is slower than the other models. The European is weaker, but brings us across the southwestern Gulf by the 12th and 13th, and then carries it into Mexico after that. Canadian model's kind of in between, kind of looks a little bit like what the GFS looked like yesterday, but shows a tropical storm affecting the Yucatan in 6 days, and then in the Western Gulf in 1 week, and threatening South Texas here in 8 days, which is too far out to make a confident forecast, but is not that far out in the future. Thank you so much for watching today. I pray that everybody stays safe. If you did enjoy this video, please consider becoming a subscriber. As always, I give all the honor and all the glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Without him, I don't think I would be in a position here to bless other people. Excuse me. I've been a meteorologist for over 20 years. I've been a Christian for 11, but because I have that joy in my life, because I've got that servant nature, because of what was done for me, I've got the ability to bless other folks. And you are welcome here no matter what you believe. You don't have to believe what I do, but I don't feel that I can just go through every day and give myself all the credit. It all goes to God. He has put me here on earth for a reason. He's put you here for a reason. And I pray that you are remaining in joy instead of remaining in difficulty. We can't battle things ourselves here. This is a large world with lots of problems, but our God is greater than those problems. And I believe we can truly speak to him and pray to him, and that he can provide us the comfort and peace if we are patient and if we yield to him and are humble to him. So I am praying for everybody's safety here. This is going to be a very nasty storm. While not a category 3, 4, or 5, it's going to have a lot of impact, and it's going to affect a lot of people. And I pray that you guys stay safe. I will talk to you guys again soon. I may do a video tonight, more than likely tomorrow at lunchtime, but be good, and we'll catch you soon. Take care.